Okay, folks, this week we have a really, really special conversation. We are joined by a good friend, Connie, from Montreal, who drove to Halifax to be in studio with us to record this conversation. Connie lives with cystic fibrosis, just like me. And we kind of dive into this conversation about how these days, the next steps that we've been seeing happening with these modulator drugs like Trikafta, just how it is having an effect on our day-to-day. Outside of just like the way it's totally positively affecting our physical selves, we really dive into like how it's kind of fucking with our mental selves. And really, I mean, this is just like a really wonderful opportunity for me, selfishly, to be able to sit down and have like a one-on-one conversation with somebody else who's in a really similar situation to myself. Connie's a eloquent, beautifully smart, wonderful conversationalist, and I'm really grateful to know her, and I'm so happy that she was able to come here and have a conversation with the three of us, because it's just really lovely to have people in the world like her. So I hope you enjoy this as much as we did, and we'll see you on the other side in the wrap-up where we talk about heart transplants for robots. Enjoy. Okay, well, this is, I know I always say like, oh, I'm really excited about this episode. This one I'm actually truly very, very much looking forward to.
And you heard it here, folks.
As opposed to the lie that you
is
say.
Usually lying at the start of every episode when he says
it's not
that.
a lie. It's more of a catchphrase. You know, it's just become a sort of like comfort blanket.
Go fuck yourself, San Diego.
I mean, hey, I'll say this. When I don't start the episode and I'm not hearing you guys start the episode, it's a rough start.
That is funny.
Taylor. Okay. So, we're here, and okay, and let's get into it. And
I don't do that. You know what I actually do whenever I step into your shoes when you're not here?
You go, well, if Jeremy was here, he would say he was really excited.
Dude, I actually
what do you do?
Take on your intro, outro mannerisms and and little sayings, and I don't think about it. I don't mean to.
And you do it because
the chair.
It helps. Because the chair is so sinky. So here's the reason why I'm so excited. We're joined by our new friend Constance, and Constance lives with cystic fibrosis. Constance was also diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at 18 months old, just like me.
Okay. How old are you, Constance?
I am 32.
32. Okay.
Different years.
A little bit of different years, yeah. But Constance is, so we just put out this podcast, Breathless. It was very well received among the CF community. I'm going to say this now. I don't think I've said it on the show before, but like, it's the one creative project that we've worked on that I'm probably the most proud of out of anything I've ever been a part of. And that's coming from like being in a creative career since I left high school. I'm so proud of what we did. And after we put the show out, Constance and I were having a chat, and we were talking about Trikafta, and we were talking about like how fucking crazy it is mentally for CF patients. And, I was like, you should come on the show. And Constance was like, all right, well, I'm going to drive from Montreal to Halifax to come on the show. To which I was like, you really don't have to do that. It's as easy as getting online. But
now that you have done it,
but you insisted. Yeah,
now that you have done it, this is the new bar.
So yeah, this is it.
Like,
so if you're listening, and
sorry,
that's
guys.
what people have to do.
You don't live here.
I have a burning question
Mm-hmm.
right off the top. Okay, CF modulators, Jair's on modulators, you're on modulators.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Now, do either of you know what the deal is being around other people with CF now that you're on modulators?
No.
I think the jury's either in or out. We're not sure yet.
Yeah.
But I do think that there is still precautions that need to be taken, because if I was like Sapatio positive or you were Sapatio positive, that could still like be fucky. So, when Constance came in, like I was like, hello. I didn't go over and give her a hug, which I was like resisting because I want to hug you. But
You have to be 5 feet apart. Well, it's
Just
technically
hug with
6
the
feet.
eyes.
And right now we're 2 feet apart, but that's
Right.
whatever.
Yeah, maybe 3 and a
The
half.
camera adds 5 pounds. I don't know what that is.
Something like
The
that.
camera adds 5 feet.
So Constance, first of all, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Secondly, let's get right into it. Introduce yourself to the three of us and to all of our listeners. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. So my name is Constance, Connie for the friends. So yes, I'm 32. I live in Montreal. I have CF. I have been living with CF my whole life. I'm very passionate about advocating for my community.
Mhm.
Ever since I was a little kid, I've always wanted to like do stuff for CF, but my doctors were always like, you can't, because you can't be with people who have CF. So just me being here right now with Jeremy, for me, my little Connie inside of me is like, you did it.
Fuck you, doctors.
But yeah, it's been a journey. My parents were French from France. I was born in Calgary, Canada, so that's a whole thing. And we moved around a lot for my dad's work because he used to be a school principal for French schools around the world. So
Cool.
he would have like a few years in a city. So we lived in Canada in a few cities. We lived in the US. We lived in France for a while. And we also moved to Lebanon for a
Cool.
while as well. So I did manage to see a lot of like medical realms and like different ways of handling CF. Like in Lebanon, there's not that many people with CF. So there wasn't like a CF clinic. So we would always have to fly back to France to go visit family. And so I would get checkups there. So,
Wow.
That's wild
crazy.
because I
Yeah.
mean, kudos to your family for like still, seeking out like living a life like that, because I feel like a lot of people who are diagnosed with, so like I'm thinking of my mom's experience. So my mom had cancer.
Yeah.
She was diagnosed while she was living in China teaching English. And when she came home, she is like incredibly nervous to ever leave the country, certainly ever to live abroad. And a large part of that is trying to navigate a foreign healthcare system, trying to figure out like, like how do you get supplies? Like how do you get support if something's going wrong? Like is there, fear around a language barrier and things like that? So I'm curious, like, have you had the conversation with your family about what that was like, or even from your perspective, like going to a CF clinic here when you were younger versus being in Lebanon where, CF isn't as prominent?
Yeah, it was a very interesting way of being brought up because my parents had a hard time getting pregnant. So it took them maybe 5 years to get pregnant or something. I was kind of like the miracle baby in a way. And then I get diagnosed 18 months in.
The cursed baby that was
Literally.
originally a miracle
Yeah.
turns out to be the miracle of Satan.
It's me.
A miracle curse.
Beelzebub,
it
they
can be
call
both.
Name
it.
her Constance.
And so in Calgary, I was born in February in Calgary, and my parents, as I mentioned, are French, and at the time could barely speak a word of English. So
Ooh.
they have a kid, they get this crazy diagnosis. My mom used to work in a pharmacy when she lived in France, so she was kind of more aware of like medical terms. So she kind of like took on the whole like medical side of me. But my dad, he kind of like shut down isn't the word,
Yeah.
but and I spoke about this with him like a few weeks ago because he visited me and he said, I was ready for you to die so many times.
Yeah.
So he's like, you lived until you were like 3 years old. And then I was like, she's going to be gone in the next like 5 years. So kind of every year was like this mental thing for him. And I remember him saying, and this is kind of a wild thing to say, but he's like, CF is like a sick dog. We're not going to pay attention to it. So he's like, we're going to, feed it and like do all the things, but we're not going to pay attention. So he wasn't saying you're a sick dog and we're not going to pay attention to it. But
The
the
CF,
illness in
yeah.
itself is just like this thing that we have to live with, but we're not going to make it a big part of our life.
Yeah.
So doctors were like, hey, there's like these summer camps for sick kids. And, you spoke about it in Breathless. But both of my parents were like, fuck no, like she's just going to live her life and that's it. We're not. I think they were also kind of like really scared of being faced with like the reality of having a sick kid. So they were like, we're just going to, and I mean, they took care of me really, really well. Like, I went to all my hospital appointments.
Yeah.
But there was this thing where they were like, we're not going to address it. But it was also weird because I wasn't scared of addressing it myself. I've always been super vocal about it. And when I was listening to Breathless, you mentioned discovering that, it was like a fatal illness and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think of myself. I was like, when did I realize that this was, something that was going to kill me? And I couldn't pinpoint it. It was almost like it was I knew it.
Yeah.
It was like this thing I was born with. And I was like, yeah, it's going to take me out. And I was
Do you think that there was ever do you think that your parents ever sort of brought it to light to you as you were growing up? Like it was a part of the internal conversation, even though you weren't like going, even though they were like, we're not going to pay attention to it. And we're going to like probably remove ourselves and you from the community in terms of, sick kids camps and all that kind of shit. Was there like a pretty decent amount of like internal dialogue between you and your family about your situation and what that all meant?
That's the thing. I don't really remember having like specific conversations, but I remember so at some point I lived in Toronto when I was a child, and I would go to like sick kids in Toronto, and on my floor there was a girl who had CF, and she was a bit older than me. And I think she passed away.
Oh.
Like while I was in the hospital.
Sure.
So I think there was just like this idea of death that was just kind of like around.
It seeped in ways that were
it's almost
subliminally enough to like
yeah.
make it to the forefront of your mind.
And it was totally normal. Like I remember these people came to visit me at some point. I don't know if they were like doing research on CF or something. And this was when I lived in the US. So I was like maybe 8 or 9. And they were like asking me a bunch of questions. And they didn't even ask me anything about like dying. But I remember sitting next to them and I was like, oh, and by the way, I'm like really not afraid of dying.
You're like, wow.
Like, why is she talking about
such an 8-year-old?
It sounds like the version, like when your parents, Jer, were like, we're seeing the CF clinic when you were diagnosed, or in like the years that you being still a young kid, and them saying, he'll find out and he'll come to you.
Yes, right.
It's almost like
this happened.
This is
here.
the version.
This
is the version that they had in their heads.
Yes.
That would happen.
Yes, right.
Where
right.
Like peripherally, it seeps in. You understand, and then like you actually never have like a moment. You just have this like background subconscious understanding, and it's just your reality. and then at one point, you're like, your adult brain switches on and you're like, oh, that's called
all the signs were there
death.
For me. I was just too focused on like the Undertaker to fucking see any of them. I was just like,
They were like, have you talked to him about his wrestling obsession? We feel like that might be getting in the way of his I was too obsessed with the fact
that the Undertaker was a living dead man for me to realize that I was the same.
Constance, I'm curious, I understand the idea of like sort of just knowing that death is part of the thing that you're living with.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if there was a moment when you were like, oh, the life expectancy is actually like 30, where like the actual number of like how many years you might have became more of like a reality to you.
So same with that. I think it's almost kind of like a backwards thing for me, where it's like it was a thing I always knew I was going to die young. Like nobody specifically sat me down and was like, yo, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
However, I do remember the day I realized that pulmonary transplant was a thing, which I had never heard of before until I turned 18. I met these people who had just gotten transplanted. And I remember coming out of that conference, calling my parents, bawling on the phone. And I was like, did you guys know about this? Like, we can live longer because of this? Like, my entire life, I was like, honestly, by the time I'm like 50 for me was like my limit. I was like, 50, I'm out. Like, this is it. So when I turned 25, I was like, this is my like midlife crisis. Like, let's buy a convertible. Like, I didn't. But yeah, so it's like death was my best friend. It's the weirdest thing, but And the older I got, the more sick I got. And like, we're going to get to this, but before I started modulators, like during the pandemic, maybe the first years of the pandemic, it got like worse and worse. Like I would cough up blood at once or twice a year. You know, it was just getting to a point where I was like, okay, this is.
What was your trajectory like? Were you like, did your lung function and your health kind of like gradually decline over time, or did you have like major dips, or what did that look like?
When I was a kid, it was like I'd be in the hospital like once a year for treatment. And then pretty much, like it was like stable-ish. I had a really hard time putting on weight.
Yeah.
But I would say I'm like a 50-50 CF person, like pancreatic and pulmonary.
Yeah.
That's what I call
I was going to
myself.
ask, like, are you Delta F508?
Yes.
Or
So I have a
double
tattoo
copy?
right here that I did for my,
Sick.
it's like very, very old, but I did it for my 20th.
Yeah, I love it. It looks like a sailor's tattoo
Yeah.
that was like put on years ago, and just the
Yeah, you
sun
guys
just
talked about
fucking
it
decimated it.
Exactly. So
Just a
I'm also a
blob.
sailor. So yeah, I had a really hard time putting on weight, and then I moved to Montreal with my mom for college. So when I turned 18, and then my mom stayed with me for a year, and then she moved to stay with my dad. He had a contract in the Emirates at that point, so she left. And so I was left to my own defenses for the first time in my entire life. And she had been like, every morning she'd put all my medication on my plate. Like I didn't have to think about anything medication wise. The second she left, I was like, okay, I'm gonna like do my thing.
You're like, you eat breakfast and you're like, wait, fuck, how many?
Literally.
How many enzymes?
It was like that, except for the digestive enzymes, because like if I didn't take them, I just like would not survive a day. So I was like, these are sacred. The rest
Fell by the wayside.
who cares?
Yeah.
And then
Same, dude.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
And then I just started living, and then my pulmonary function just slowly started freaking out. And then at some point it got so bad that my dad came to visit at some point, and we went to the hospital for like a doctor checkup. And I don't even know if that's like legal, but my dad was like, hey, can I like talk to the doctor by myself? And so the doctor's like, yeah, sure. So I left the room, and it was like an old building. So I just like put my head against the door, and my dad asked my doctor, he's like, what's going on with her? Cause like, something's not right. And the doctor's like, she's like 2 seconds away from a transplant list. Like this.
Oh, wow.
She
Holy
needs
shit.
to like fucking.
What was your lung? Do you remember what your lung function was at around that time?
It was like 35 or 40.
Yeah,
like
okay,
it was
wow.
really bad.
Really low. Yeah.
And I remember I couldn't even walk up the stairs anymore.
Yeah.
Like I was dating this guy, and I went to visit him in Paris, and he had to, he was like holding me in his arms to walk up the metro stairs.
That's kind of
Like,
romantic though.
True. I was like, this is amazing. I've always said CF is the most romantic illness. You'll
Totally.
like not having breath.
Yeah.
Like,
Took your
ew,
breath
hot.
away.
Takes my breath away.
So just for the folk, maybe we have someone listening who's like totally new to the podcast and they haven't listened to Breathless or whatever. So you and I both have cystic fibrosis. There are thousands of genetic variants of the disease. The most common is the tattoo that you have, which is Delta F508, and you can have 2 copies of that, or you could have 1 copy and another copy of a completely different one. All the genetic variations sound like the name that they give a fucking distant star, or like a planet or some shit. And so, but everybody that has CF kind of has Paul Eckford said it in Breathless, or maybe I mentioned it, took the words from Paul and said it myself. But if you meet one person with CF, you know one person with CF, and so it's very different from patient to patient, and you can have symptoms that are very prominently sort of present within your digestive system. So you have a really hard time breaking down food, digesting food. So you have to take oral enzymes every single time you eat because your pancreas isn't producing the enzymes, and your digestive system's clogged with mucus, and so you're not absorbing nutrients. And so those pills are, like you said, necessary, sacred. You need those, or else you're going to have a bowel obstruction, or in my case, intussusception. But then there's also all these other sort of supplementary medications that have to go along with that in order to really make the most of any time you eat. So, for some people, it's like proton pump inhibitors so that you're not, so that your digestion works as well, like omeprazole or daily vitamin intake, because again, you're not getting the nutrients that you need from your food.
And all those words sound very star related as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Centrum Fort. I mean, that's
Yes.
right. Totally.
Proton pump?
I've never heard of that one.
Neither have I.
Yeah.
Omeprazole, which again is like a medication that I need, and I take it probably half as much as I should.
Yeah.
And then there's the weight problem, right? So it's like you've always had a hard time gaining weight. So I feel like you and I have very similar sort of experiences with CF, although my lung function never dropped to that low.
Okay.
So did you say you were 18 when your lung function dropped this low?
So I started living on my own at 18. So by the time it took me to kind of do my own thing and whatever. Yeah. So I'd say like around 19.
Okay. So within a year, like it just slipped. Like
Yeah.
And so
was that a result of like not
Yes.
doing as much as you should have?
And also like not working out and like having a hard time kind of feeding, because it's also like you need to gain weight to like have more,
you lose the weight. It's hard. It's like your body's working harder to just like process everything. I mean, it's a number of different factors, but that's not an uncommon experience where like you're now living on your own and you don't have those advocates that are there for you, ensuring, nagging you to make sure that you take your pills or whatever. Yeah. And so it's like, it's not uncommon for people to kind of end up in that situation.
Yeah. Were you like indulging in like the freedom in the sense like, I when I was in first year university, like partying a little bit and doing things that I probably shouldn't have done?
I was kind of like a more relaxed kind of partier. I think I did indulge, but it was also because
like
I had
ketamine. You're just and then
funny story though about
so
drugs
relaxed.
is that I didn't do. I tried weed like years later. Like I took a space cake. Right, I had never done drugs before, and I was like 23 or something.
It was called Delta 508. It's fucking strong. It's heavy duty, dude.
And like
space cake is
my
heavy.
friend was like, "Hey, do you want to like try a space cake?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And then I took it, and I was like, the amount of medication I've been taking my entire life. I don't know. I thought my body was so used to like taking medication that like weed wouldn't work. I was like, drugs don't work on me because I take so many medications that it's just like, it's so used to.
Yeah. How wrong were you?
So wrong.
So
I
wrong.
went to space and back. Like it was literally space cake.
I actually got a question. So it was an edible?
Yes.
And like, do you know, was it like 10 milligrams, 15 milligrams?
I think it was, I have no, but it was a lot.
It was like a lot.
It was a space cake.
Yeah.
If you've never done weed before, then like any amount.
Yeah. Did you, because I know our friend, whatever, Steph, our friend Steph, he tried weed once and it metabolized weird in his body and he was high for like 2 days.
I was high for a long time, but I also feel like, again, it was my first time but I felt like I could feel my veins. Like I was just in bed and I was like,
oh, that's awesome.
What's going on?
Fuck yeah, dude.
I was having a hard time.
Grab the space cake. Bring that over here. Let's.
Doesn't sound fun.
It really wasn't.
No, it's awful. That's horrifying. Okay, so you get that you're at 35% lung function. That's really nearing like transplant list. That's coming into like end stage CF. That was quite a while ago. So 19 to 32. So like, what was the plan? How did you get from that to a place where you were more stable? Yeah. And how did that lead to the point of like, okay, modulators are in the picture and you're one of the early folks that like got your hands on some of these modulators?
Yeah. So I was saying that my dad was in town and that's when I heard the doctor talk. And he was in town for like a week or 2 weeks. And my parents used to live in Montreal before I was born. And they had a bunch of friends who still lived there. And one of their friends' daughters had just finished an acupuncture diploma. And we actually met up with her for dinner. And I hadn't seen her since I was like 6. And, I just kind of started talking to her. And at that time, I was so sick. Like now that I think about it, I was really sick. And we were just talking and I was like, hey, do you think that there's like anything that you could do in regards to like my lungs, like acupuncture. I'm kind of at a point right now where I just like need to try something that's going to work. And she was like, honestly, like, let's fucking go. Like, I have no idea, but like, let's try something. So I was like, okay, cool. So a week later, I go into her office. She did like a few, I don't know if you guys have ever done acupuncture, but she kind of like put a few little pins in. Literally the second she put her last one in, I was like on the bed thing. It felt like there was a washing machine like inside my stomach. Just like, it just went like this. It was like a tornado.
Whoa.
And I almost passed out. I was like, this is too much. So she like took like 2 out and she's like, are you better? And I was like, yeah. She like really hit a point. And so I started seeing her once a week for like years, like maybe 4 years or something. And so she gave me the feeling of being hungry, which is something. So, because at first she was like, I don't know about lung stuff, but she was like, digestive wise, I'm for sure going to help you.
No way.
So I had
Holy
never
shit.
felt hungry up until that point. Like hunger for me was just like not a thing. So I started eating like I had never eaten before.
Holy shit.
Wild. That is fucking fascinating.
I was like
crazy.
ogre woman. Like it was just everything that was, I was like, I'm hungry all the time.
It would be so funny, like not knowing hunger and hearing people complain about being hungry. You'd just be like, what the fuck?
What are you talking about?
That doesn't make any sense.
Food sucks. Why do you like food so much?
And like my mom was is an amazing cook, and like she would always cook me these amazing meals, and like, but I was always like so not hungry, and it was awful. So anyways, I started gaining weight from that.
Acupuncture is the reverse Ozempic.
My favorite
Literally.
thing, that's right.
Both injections.
That's right. My
That's
favorite
fucking
My
crazy.
favorite thing about eating with Jer, about eating anywhere with Jer or with Jer, no matter what it is that Jer always leaves, no matter what,
I'm actually
15
sure Jared doesn't know what hunger is.
15 or 20% of his meal is always left
Never
on the
touched the
plate.
stuff.
So
Really?
so I always
Yeah.
know that like
Huh.
whatever I get, I know I get like an appetizer level amount of food on top of that. because
Jared
Jer
will
won't finish
order
his
the
food.
hungry man.
No, I don't. I
And-
order
He will
meals
not.
for a regular human.
Even if Jer ordered an order of toast, he would
Yeah.
only eat 80% of the toast.
That's
It doesn't
right.
even matter.
It's like a
just-
math
Is it
thing
like a
for him.
habit thing, or is it you're just not hungry and you're just
Yeah, I mean, I think I have just a little baby belly, and my belly doesn't
It
need.
could be a thing. For,
I think it's a psychological thing.
I think it's a thing like
I
where
don't
he's
think it is.
prepping for the afterlife. Have you ever heard that? Like you leave a bit on the plate for
I have not, but
what
I get
comes
it.
next.
There's starving children in Africa. I think we should not be doing that for
I
that
don't.
sake.
I don't do it. I'm just saying.
I'm just not hungry. So
Jer does it,
I'm
and I
just
eat
pointing
it.
out the
Yeah.
fact that that is a thing.
I've never heard that, and that is bullshit.
Yeah, well, there are people
How
that
does
do
it get up there?
there's an elevator?
Yeah,
Up there.
there's a dumb waiter that just takes it right.
What
up to
about
heaven.
down there?
That's right.
So yeah, okay, so that's fascinating. So you packed on the pounds, and then as a result, your lung function started to improve.
Slowly, not like
Right, sure,
not
sure.
the best. Also because I mean we talk about this all the time, but like physical education, like you need to fucking
Mhm.
work out or like do
Yes.
something. I've never been like a competitive sports girly. I've always done like individual sports.
Yeah, golf.
No. But I did do a lot of like trapeze stuff when I was a kid.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
like,
hell
that's
yeah.
fun. That's
gyms
fun.
and I loved it, but
Yeah.
traveling around so much, it was hard for me to like find a place where I could like,
Yeah.
do trapeze. Yeah.
exactly.
Montreal's a great spot.
It is
Yeah,
actually
if
it
you're gonna
is.
do trapeze, that's
It
the
is.
spot.
So and so the doctors were like, you really need to work out. Like it's also going to help you with like weight gain, but it's just like the lung function.
Yeah.
So it took me a really long time to like find something that would fit.
What was it?
It started out with pole dancing.
Nice. Sweet.
Which was really helpful for like muscle gain and all that stuff. And then fast forward today.
You
I-
work at Chez Parade and you're making fucking bank.
exactly.
I was
Yeah,
going to say
nice.
Montreal's also. A
I
good
work
city
at
for that.
Cleopatra. No, I'm kidding. No. So, but I do a lot of rock climbing now.
Nice.
Cool.
Yeah, that's
Um,
good. That's really good.
I'm obsessed with it. It's
I feel
so
like
much
CF
fun.
bodies are like
Yes.
fucking prime for
100%.
rock climbing.
No, it's
Totally.
the
Yeah.
best.
The core
Lean.
strength, leanness.
Yes.
Mm,
There's
The
like
core
a
stuff.
built-in, like
Mm.
you're just built in for it.
We have
I don't
built-in
know.
Yeah,
You
you've
guys
been
met
coughing. You've been
Steph
coughing your
Strecko?
way to a solid
Steph
core your whole
Strecko
life.
is an anomaly because the guy might as well be a fucking linebacker.
Steph is an outlier for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Not a good rock climber. I'm
No,
guessing.
no.
No,
Horrible
dude.
rock climber.
He's he's a lot of weight condensed into a very small package.
Good power lifter.
Yeah, exactly. That's cool. Rock climbing, sweet.
Yeah, climbing and Pilates as well has been a game changer.
Cool.
So,
Okay, so I mean, firstly, that acupuncture thing is fucking wild, and I feel like you should be like, you should look into what she was doing, and man, that lady should like, that's a
I say it all the time that she saved my life, literally.
Because I feel like when you started to talk about acupuncture, I was like, oh, I know where this is gonna go. Nowhere. And then you totally pulled the rug out from under me, and I was like, whoa, did not see that coming. So good for her, and that's really amazing. And I feel like that, if you're out there listening to this and you have CF, and or you're just you need that reverse Ozempic, maybe acupuncture is the thing, but I wouldn't know where to poke you. Where was she poking you? In the legs?
Literally everywhere.
Just everywhere. Yeah.
Legs. There was like this. She did some stuff on the wrists as well. And it was such a, because I stopped since.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was in the ears.
Yeah. Cool.
It's so crazy. Like,
that's really cool.
Because I mean, there's a whole bunch of, and just on the point that the joke that you made, like, I know where this is going. Nowhere.
That was a joke.
And I know that you're joking about that, but like, there are obviously there's a whole bunch of like things like acupuncture. Like, I don't want to throw the whole like osteopathy like profession under the bus in any way, but like a lot of things where there's aspects to it that are like unquantifiable, very hard to like put an evidence thing on it.
Most Eastern medicine does, have that sort of attached to it.
But like,
it's come from somewhere.
But then you go and like, who knows whether it's actually something that they're doing or whether it's something that they're doing mixed with like a shift in your psychology, and like maybe you just start to believe in a way that that something could change, and then because you think it does. Like, I went to an osteopath to fix something on my back that was nagging me for like 2 years. This person physically did nothing to me. And I walked out and I went, back pain gone. Literally did nothing physically. Like touched me like they were poking like with zero pressure. And then I walked up and I was like, what'd you do? Because I'm fixed now. And that makes no sense, but it happened. So I mean, it's just fascinating how
what Taylor's trying to say is it's all in your head.
Nothing is real.
To the
classic hysterical woman vibes.
to the point about science, like, we know the scientific benefit of placebo, and so
Oh,
whether it is
massive.
or isn't, if somebody believes something helps them and that makes them feel better, then it's worth that person continuing to do it.
Yeah.
And if it's in your head is a place, and if something's happening there, then we should know about it.
Yeah.
So again, just to clarify, we're not shitting on you going to action.
No, just saying it's fascinating.
It is.
So again, just to the listeners that like might not be in the loop, which is probably not many, knowing that our listeners are so dedicated. Thank you. So in the last few years, Trikafta, a medication that came onto the scene, which was kind of a byproduct of a couple of other drugs that were sort of combined together, Orkambi and Kalydeco, or a couple of other modulators. Trikafta came into the picture, and it like completely transformed the CF community in a huge fucking way. Basically, it's not a drug that treats the symptom, but it treats at the source. So it literally like is changing the shape of the particular protein that's affected by CF, folding it into the shape that it should be in. And, CF is a result of that one protein being the shape that it shouldn't be. These drugs have like fucking rattled the CF community in a huge way, huge positive way, a lot of ways that aren't so positive. And, that's the scene that we're in right now. I didn't get I didn't start Trikafta until, what was it? 2021, like the end of 2021,
December of 2021.
Yeah. And it's been, from a physical standpoint, it's been night and day. Like, since I started to where I am now, it's like I'm a completely different person. And there's all these sort of trickle down effects that has on the ways that I like, from like an ontological kind of standpoint. Like, it's shifted the way that I view the world, the way that I view what it means to be alive. You were one of the early kind of early adopters of modulators. Trikafta, I take it, was the first that you were.
I tried some other ones before.
And how did this happen? Like, were you part of like trials, or
Yes.
what was the situation?
I'm part of a research program in Montreal, at the Montreal hospital, like the university hospital, Le CHUM. So I've been at that research center since like maybe 2017 or 2018. So it's been a minute, and I've tried a bunch of, different modulators. I like would not know the names right now because it just feels so far away.
Mhm.
But that was one of the things, when I was a kid, I was like, I want to help my community. And so that was a way for me to help, because I was like, I will be your hamster since I can't like hang out with other
Mhm.
CF people. Let me just try to figure it out.
And did you start to see benefits right away, or some hit and miss?
So when I started in like 2018, it did help, like definitely. But then I reached some sort of a plateau where I could just like live my life, and I clearly was still getting sick, and I would like cough up blood and stuff. So, but it was like a good plateau. And I was like, you know what? If I get to live like this until the day I die, I'm okay with it. Like I
Mhm.
can, I was in college, and then I started working, and I was like, I had relationships, I had friends, I had social life, and I was like, okay, this feels great. Like my average pulmonary function was like around 50%.
Yeah.
And I was like, do I need 100%? I don't think so. Like I can do everything with 50. So I was living my life. And
Mhm.
then, so yeah, that kind of started happening. And then I started Trikafta through the research program as well. And I started in August of 2022. So
Okay.
we kind of started, well, around the same.
Sure.
It's been like 2 years.
Sure. Yeah.
It'll be, yeah. And so that was like the biggest mindfuck of my life. Like
Yeah.
if I get to talk about this with you guys today without crying, it'll be like a big achievement. But it's been like a whirlwind of emotions. And
Take us through those first like few weeks.
Yeah.
When you first started, a lot of people talk about the purge, which I didn't really have that.
Holy moly.
But I noticed like an increasing cough a little
Yeah.
bit, and I was a little bit more like, definitely bringing up like more mucus. But like
Yeah.
some people are like, I was just basically just a fucking mucus machine,
Yeah.
and it was insane. I didn't really have that, but what was your experience
It was
starting it early on?
crazy. So I took it through the research program, the first pill. So I remember they like sat me down. They're like, here's your first pill. You're going to have to stay with us for 2 hours
Whoa.
before you go home, because we just want to like make sure everything's okay. So okay, I'm nervous. So I took it with a little piece of cheese, and so like nothing kind of happened, but they were like, in the first few hours, something might happen.
Yeah, you're just gonna grow a dick.
I was like, yeah, literally. I was like,
Oh,
no. Hello.
They said that this might happen. I didn't think it would.
My nipples fell off. Oh, fuck.
So I sat down, kind of waited, nothing happened. And then I went home, and then in the afternoon, I started coughing.
Mhm.
And at that point, I would cough every day.
Sure, yeah.
Mucus was like part of my daily life. So,
Yeah. Romantic.
but then totally. But then with time, like I would talk about this period of my life, and I would say the purge, but I didn't know that that's what it was called.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I'd be like, oh my God, something happened. It was like crazy purge. And then I heard, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
weird. I started coughing up shit.
Literally?
Like toys,
Literally.
like fucking, like an old
A
keychain.
computer.
I've seen that episode of South Park.
Like fossilized mucus.
Wow.
Like
Whoa.
shit I was
Right.
probably born with.
Yeah. Wow.
Whoa.
Like these things that looked like actual rocks.
No way.
It
Wow.
was the weirdest thing ever. And so I lived
What color were
alone.
they?
It was like a grayish, like
Wow.
it clearly had not seen daylight
Yeah.
in
Oh.
a while.
Did it
Like,
feel good?
it felt, because I was alone, right? Like I was
Yeah.
in my house, like I live alone. I would just like cough. And I don't know if this is so gross, but I'm glad I'm talking about this with you guys. But
Go for it.
when
It's not
you,
gonna gross me.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
all mucus friendly.
but like when you start coughing something and you know that it's not the consistency of something you're used to coughing up,
Yeah.
Mhm.
it felt kind of, like hard,
Yeah.
like a block. And
Yeah.
so I was like, and you can like feel it come up. And I was
Yeah.
like, this is going to be a big one.
Yeah,
Like what's
yeah.
happening? So I like run to the bathroom, grab like a tissue paper, and I kind of like spit it out. I look at it and I'm like,
And it said something to you.
thank you. Help.
I'm so thirsty.
Yeah.
Like it literally grew a mouth. Like it was I remember
30 years, Connie.
Yeah.
I remember looking at it and I was like, should I take a picture?
Oh,
'Cause
yeah,
this
dude.
is like going
Yeah.
in the garbage.
Yeah.
I didn't, which
Yeah.
I am
Oh,
so mad because
Yeah.
I would have showed you guys.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But it was like the biggest piece of mucus I had ever seen. And
Wow.
it was so weird being like faced with it by myself.
Yeah.
And like, honestly, even if I had lived with a partner or a roommate, I don't think I would have showed them because they would have been like, you're so strange.
Yeah.
But it was like a very intimate moment because I was like, okay, something's happening clearly. And this was like in the first few weeks of taking Trikafta.
Yeah.
So it was, and the purge had started a few hours after trying it. So I was like, okay, something's going on. And so I would spit out mucus all the time. So I did have that purge that they were talking about. And
What about the physical? Like, what about your body? Because like,
With the mucus,
Yeah.
though, does it just like come to an end? And then you're
Yes.
like, all the
Yeah, pretty
mucus
much.
that you've had in there is
Yeah.
like, it's like, hey, this has been building up in here and now it's kind of just gone.
yeah, so
I
that's
mean, yeah, it's a blend of like coming up that way. I'm sure there's
And you're
also
making it,
I'm sure there's also
Yeah.
a portion of that that's like the water molecules are getting to where they need to go through. It's like being flushed out the sort of natural way that your bodies would typically do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's probably a blend of the two.
Yeah.
And then there's the stuff that like, the stuff that's like, get me out of here. That really needs to come up. But from the body standpoint, I know that, like body dysmorphia is kind of like a thing that like has kind of affected a lot of people with CF
Yeah.
due to so again, if you didn't know, hard to gain weight, you start Trikafta. My personal experience, I fucking gained so much weight so fast that like, I was like, I'm getting fat
Yeah.
and this is so cool. And then like 2 weeks of that, I was like, fuck this shit. Like, get me the Ozempic. Like bring me back to where I was. I cannot keep going up.
Did you
Um,
have the feeling of like being really hungry?
Uh,
I feel like that's like a thread.
no. But
Kept leaving 20% on his plate.
I kept,
Still.
but I don't have an acupuncturist. So,
But I
um,
don't either anymore. But for me, I started Trikafta like maybe a few weeks before I went to a bachelorette in Greece.
Nice.
So we partied in Mykonos for like
Perfect
4
timing.
days,
Yeah.
did not sleep, did not do anything. And I was like with a bunch of people who like just didn't want to eat food. And we were stuck on this like teeny island and there was like 0 grocery stores. So we just had like a box of cereal and like 4 Cheez-Its.
That's my
And I
jam,
was like,
yeah.
and I was like, I am so hungry. I could like eat the rocks in this garden. Like this makes like the hunger vibes were back. It was like,
Mhm.
so I just started eating whatever the fuck I could get my hands on. Like it was just giving
Olives.
ogre vibes. Like I would
Mhm.
fall asleep, wake up from being hungry. I would like go upstairs. Everyone was like hanging out. I would just like empty out the fridge inside my
Feta
body.
cheese.
Yeah.
Anything.
Just straight goblin mode.
Just literally. And then go back. I was like a literal baby. I was like sleep, eat, sleep, eat. And so I gained a lot of weight
Yeah.
as well. Are you
How
guys in
much?
pounds or kilos?
Pounds.
Fuck,
Are you
I'm a
kilos?
kilo girl.
I'm in both.
Whatever. We can.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
we
speak
can.
both
We can figure it out.
languages.
So pretty much 10 kilos
Wow.
Okay.
Whoa.
In how
25
long?
pounds.
in like, I don't know. I don't like,
Couple
honestly, maybe
months?
like 3 months.
Yeah.
4 months, like,
Yeah. I went from 138 pounds to 175
okay, yeah,
in like 2 months.
right.
So
Had to
20 kilos.
Had to buy
Yeah.
all new clothing, and then
Yes.
change my diet to like a regular human's diet as
Yes.
opposed to the fucking CF diet, which you've been like told your whole life.
Exactly.
High calorie, high fat. High calorie, high fat.
Yeah.
McDonald's. It doesn't matter. Who fucking cares?
Yeah, yeah.
Then shifted back to like regular human eating, and then kind of settled down around 150, and then all my clothes that I bought that
We're too big.
were now too big, and it was like fucking fuck. Like
Yeah.
it was such a fucking disaster.
Yeah.
But
I always say with research, they do pay me for, being like a
here on the show,
hamster. Yes, no.
This is a pharmaceutical ad.
yeah. Vertex is funding this entire podcast now.
But I'm always like, they should give us more to buy new wardrobe.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's
totally.
I
Huh,
gained
yeah.
real.
like 1 pant size.
Yes.
In everything. My boobs,
Yeah.
they also grew,
Yeah.
and
So did my dick. Yeah. Totally normal.
Totally normal. I just wanted
Totally
that on
part of
the
it. Just
record.
gonna add
On the
that.
record.
Yeah.
Boobs. It's one to one.
Yeah, that's it.
Same.
but it's so to go back to the body dysmorphia thing, and it's interesting because so you're a guy, I'm a girl, and I feel like, with
Don't
women.
assume. I didn't. But yes. Yep. But yes, you are lucky that. But anyway, continue.
Apologies.
We're progressive here.
Guys, we have to cut this whole thing out now.
But what I mean is that obviously for women, there's this whole like thing about gaining weight and like, what you look like physically. And I grew up with friends that were always constantly kind of changing in weight and just like talking about their weight gain or weight loss. And I was never that girl. Like I was always kind of in the back seat of what they were going through. And I was like, you're beautiful the way you are. Like, who gives a shit? Like, and now.
And were they like, but you're, fuck off. You're skinny. Like you're always skinny.
They weren't like, fuck off.
No,
but they were like, oh, you're so perfect. You're so skinny. And I was like super skinny.
Yeah.
And
you're like, I am so skinny and my lung function is 35% because of it. So like let's fuck.
Exactly. Like some girls were
like,
even mean to me. And I was like, this like girl, like I can't. But it's also I say it was like the privilege of being sick almost. It was like I got to be that sick, that sick skinny girl.
It was a pretty hot look in the early 2000s. For
exactly.
Sure.
So I had the Luke. But it was interesting to live that as like a 30-year-old woman because I had never experienced the waves of weight loss and weight gain.
Yes, the fluctuation. Same.
Yeah.
And like I'm totally with you 100% on that. And going, I mean, from the like gender perspective, it's probably different, but even going into that fluctuation, which is still happening now, it's like if I don't eat a certain amount of calories, I will lose. Yeah. But if I eat too many calories, I will gain. And Brian and I like are like very actively.
This is the way
doing like we're doing like a bodybuilding program.
Yeah.
We're like actively going to the gym 5 days a week. And
I mean, you don't have to say that. Everybody can tell.
I know. Yeah,
there's a video.
It's quite obvious.
I walked in. I was like,
yeah.
He's on a bodybuilding program.
That fluctuation, like to go into that mode.
Yeah.
There was. I mean, personally, I had this very subtle, but like very. It was there. This sort of thought or this voice in the back of my head that was like, "Ah, man, I wish it would have been, it was pretty cool. I'm now realizing how cool it was to not have to worry about that. Like that is now a thing that's like, oh, now I got to like think about this thing. Whereas before it was like, I just need to maintain weight.
Yes.
And that's easier as much. It's a harder, physically it's harder, but mentally it's a hell of a lot easier than to like be constantly thinking about your weight in a way that is different from what you've just, I guess it's just,
but it's also all you knew, right?
It's
like that's just me.
Exactly.
The same thing for me. So, but I think for me, it was like the whole, as you mentioned, the body dysmorphia thing. When I talk about Trikafta, I say that it's like somebody handed me a body without tailoring it. And they were like, put this on a moment's notice and like, go live your life.
Right.
And I'm like, what the fuck? Like I knew I was doing a research program and I knew that like crazy shit was going to happen, but I didn't know it was going to be this crazy. And like this fucking fast.
Yeah.
Did you know that when you got Trikafta for the first time, did the people in the research program, was there any indication to you that they were like, this is the one? Like this is most likely going to be like the one?
They didn't say it, and because I'd been on the research program for so long, I was kind of like used to trying new shit out. So it was just almost kind of like this underlying obvious thing. So they didn't really present it that way. And I had heard about Trikafta for like years. And it was all kind of sudden too. They called me and they were like, hey, we can have you try Trikafta. Are you down?
And you were on a modular at this point.
I was on something else. Yeah.
Right, sure.
And I was like, sure. Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
But I don't think you can prepare yourself to like what it's gonna
pretty crazy.
do to you. Yeah. And the trajectory this took, the first month or 2 months, I was like on cloud 9.
Yeah.
Learning how to breathe again, not coughing at night.
Yeah.
Not being worried. And to this day, I had a nightmare about this last week that I would cough up blood. Like it's this thing that I was always worried about. Listening to my lungs, what feels normal, what doesn't feel normal, and like how people look at me. I have never received this many compliments on my physical looks than I have in my entire life.
Yeah.
They're like, you look so good.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that weight, like
Yeah.
you're gorgeous. Like, and I'm sitting here and I feel like shit because I don't know how to adapt to this new body. So everyone's like, wow, like you must be so happy to be in this situation. Last year, I went through the biggest depression of my life, and I am not a depressed person. Like, I've never been depressed. I come from a long line of depressed people, but I'm not one of them. And the feelings I felt during that time, I've never had like suicidal ideations. I'm not, but I was thinking about death and my who I used to be so much. It was almost as if I had a twin sister who had died.
Yeah.
And I was grieving the most like intense grief. I couldn't spend a day without crying. And I had I had moved in by myself, and I kept on having these like images of myself as a child. And I remember when people were like, when I was a kid, they were like, oh, if there's ever like a miracle drug, like, would you take it? If it could like eradicate CF. And I would always say no.
Yeah.
I was like, this is who I am. I love myself. CF is like a friend. She's kind of annoying, but she's like here. And so I took the drug, and then I realized that CF was kind of like slipping away. And I was like, oh my God, I lied to myself. I lied to that little girl. And so I kept on apologizing to myself. I was like, I'm so sorry I let you down. Like, it was just like this crazy mental, like, I was like, I'm so sorry I lied to you. I'm so sorry that this is happening. Like, I was like burying myself. It was so strange. And so I would have these, like, I would go to bed, I would cry, I would like hug my pillow, and I would pretend it was like me as a kid. And I was like being a mother to myself. And I was like, you're okay. Like, you're still here. But it was like finding that connection with myself that I was like, I couldn't recognize myself in anything.
Holy shit, dude.
So, Jared, how foreign does that feel?
I mean, it's fucking me up because it's like, this is like everything you just said there right there. I relate to so heavily. And I think that I think one of the things that's like not really being being like sort of addressed and spoken to enough is how confusing this miracle drug is for the people that are taking it. And you know, like within the first 2 years of taking it, like I was, for the first time in my life, diagnosed with clinical depression. But I didn't know why, you know, and it's only now through like going to my therapist and talking about this shit with him on a monthly basis that like I'm realizing how much Trikafta played a role in that. Now, whether that's from like just the weight of how much this thing, the gravity of how much this has an impact on the way that you see yourself from like a place of how you identify, or if it's actually like a byproduct of the drug, that it's like, you know, maybe potentially one of the symptoms is depression, you know, like Accutane or something. I don't know. I don't know what the
they don't know either.
And they don't either.
No.
And that's all a part of the fact that like every single time I go to the CF clinic, you fill out a sort of mental health check-in list. And I think they're like trying to find the details there on like how this drug is having an effect on the mental status of the patient that's taking it. But again, where's that coming from? Is it from the shift in identity, or is it from the actual like molecular breakdown of the drug?
Yeah.
Man, that sounds like such an impossible thing
Totally.
to try and figure out.
Because the nature of the drug itself is so monumental in the way it shifts the landscape of how you see the world.
How could you separate?
Right.
It would be interesting to see a study of, because people have had varying results on Trikafta, and so it'd be interesting to see a study of how someone perceived their like the benefits of Trikafta to be versus the state of their mental health.
Yeah.
Like if somebody had really profound effects, positive effects with Trikafta,
You see
And-
higher rates of depression,
Right.
Or
Yeah.
Some people have had to
mental
stop
health issues.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
because they were feeling so depressed and
Yeah.
it was kind of new.
Mhm.
They say sometimes it like activates that
Yeah.
when it's
It-
already.
It's something that I just found so striking though, is the way that you described grieving and like holding your pillow and
Yeah.
thinking of that as like your younger self. I mean, it's like profoundly obvious how much of a shift in identity that like a lot like the grieving of your former self is. And it's so interesting. I say this pretty much every podcast episode now, but my therapist says that don't use but, use and. And so
Mhm.
this is really amazing that Trikafta exists, and it's also really hard to grieve the person that is no longer part of you. It's interesting to think about this, like, because like from an outside perspective, it's like nothing but positive, like
Right.
it's like, hey, you're better, you're getting better. How great is that? And like even when you talk about how hard it is to grieve that previous identity no longer being here, it's hard from an outside perspective of somebody who hasn't experienced that to be like, oh yeah, like I get that. Like I can say I understand that, but it is really hard to imagine.
And that's where
how
the like
challenging that is.
the spiraling also came into play, because it was like I was trying to tell people about it, and then the response was, no, but it's great. Like I'm sorry you're sad, but it's like the one thing that some people have said, like close people, like my father has said this to me and one of my best friends. They were like, I'm so sorry you're feeling this way, but your grief is my joy. My dad said, I was ready for you to die
Mhm.
every day.
Mhm.
And so you being healthy now, I know you hate, like you don't hate it, but you feel
It's challenging.
horrible.
Yeah.
But he's like, your sadness has lifted a weight off of my
Yeah,
shoulders. And
Which
so
that in and of itself is confusing and hard
it's
for you, right?
It's honestly,
like,
it's the worst, because it's like
you feel guilty, or
you feel guilty,
yeah.
and it's like, I don't know about you, but for me, always being in the hospital and being sick, I think I always felt like I kind of had to take care of my parents' mental health as well. So like when I was really sick and in the hospital, I was like, oh, but it's gonna be okay. Even though I was like, I don't fucking know if it's gonna be okay, but I was like, don't worry, like we're gonna be fine. And so I always felt like I had to take care of other people within my sickness. And then now that I'm doing better, I'm like, I need you guys to like take care of me for like for real.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh no, but you're better, so we don't need to.
Yeah.
And but my parents have been super open to like talking and stuff.
I don't know if I talked about I've talked about this on other podcasts now, and I might have probably mentioned it on our show once, but I had a moment where a friend of mine put this into context for me that like kind of like blew my mind. And it was the first time I was talking to someone where and this was like a sort of a newer friend, like an acquaintance that started to become a lot closer to me in the last like few months. And him and I went out for a beer to sort of like catch up, and he was like, what's the, like, weren't you supposed to be dead? Like, what's the deal? And I was like, yeah. So I told him the whole Trikafta thing. And I was waiting for the response to be the same response that everyone gives, which is like, that's amazing, period, full stop.
Yeah.
And his response was like, holy shit, that must be really fucking hard. And I was like, whoa, yeah, actually, like it is. It's fucking weird. And he made this analogy that like blew my mind. And I won't give you the analogy that he gave. There was another analogy that someone made based on that one that while I was doing this someone else's podcast that I really love, because I think it's really like easy. Did you ever see Castaway with Tom Hanks?
Yes. Yeah.
He gets, the movie starts, he gets on he's a FedEx pilot. He gets on the plane, but before he does, Helen Hunt, his like girlfriend, is like, when are you coming back? And like, when are you going to pop the question kind of thing? And he gives her a box and he says, I'll be, or he shows her a box and he's like, I'm going to let you open this when I come home. And it's obvious, like he's going to ask her to marry him. And so he gets on the flight crashes. He's on the fucking desert island. He's there forever. Says it makes friend with a volleyball. And fast forward, he gets rescued, and it's like, a couple of years later or something, he gets rescued. And the end of the movie, he goes to Helen Hunt's house. He finds where she is, goes to her house, knocks on the door. She opens the door, and she's confronted with the man that she was going to marry, to which she had grieved the loss of, she thought was dead, and she had moved on and had a family and a husband. And that is like the experience of Trikafta. Like Tom Hanks is this life that you had grieved that has come knocking on the door when you are like, holy shit, this is amazing. And I've moved on. I have a family. Like, I'm used to the idea of not living till I'm 80. I've moved on. Like, I've made peace with that. But now you're here and I got to figure out what the fucking do about it.
Yeah.
And, you know, for her in that moment, like, that's a beautiful moment for this guy to show up. But also, what do you do with that info? Like, how do you process that? How do you move forward with this information, you know? But the difference is that, you know, in our situation, Tom Hanks goes, sorry, don't care. I'm moving in, and the husband and children are out, and now I'm forcing myself upon you. Like, that's
a wild like,
you know?
movie. I
Yeah.
forgot about
Yeah,
that.
And it's, you know, like, that's the thing that I just want people to know that, like, if you know someone who's gone through this, or like, just keep in mind, like, it is so awesome, and it's so fucking hard.
I just want to say, I want to make that analogy just one step better, because the movie doesn't go on to show what happens after. And imagine that the husband that she chose to marry is actually an abusive husband and is going to kill her in the next few years.
Jesus Christ,
Well,
we're really
yeah,
keeping
right.
it on.
Right.
Okay.
And Tom
The
Hanks
sequel.
is coming back
Yeah.
to save her from it. Because like, that's,
Yeah.
I mean,
Castaway too. Castaway,
like
the
it
husband.
is like that life that you grieve that would never
Wilson's revenge.
happen is gone. But like, also, like, if you stayed in the situation
Yeah,
and didn't take
yeah,
that, like, you are
That's right. But
in
again,
danger. You're
but
in
you know
danger.
what? So my pushback to that is that the CF, I mean, for some people, isn't viewed as this abusive. It's like,
Yeah, that was my
it's
case.
become
Yeah.
your identity that you lean into, and that you're like, yeah, I'm gonna die early, and that's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
It might feel like an abusive relationship to you because you're not me.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like, it's my identity. It's made me who I am. And it doesn't feel that way, nor is it that way. It's not like, that's not the case. But I suppose you could wrap your head around that. And if that's the way you want to go.
Yeah. When you were talking about, like, you know, grieving your kind of like your old self, and I know that you've talked a lot about that, Jer. I was thinking of how, always trying to find ways to relate. I grew up playing hockey, thought hockey was like the thing I'd do forever. And then, you know, as you become, you know, like an older teenager, you realize like only a very small percentage of people ever get to do this for the rest of their life. And went as far as I could, didn't know what life looked like after hockey. And then obviously hockey ends and you go on and it feels like really acutely horrible and you don't know what to do and you're really confused. And then you just like start living your life and you do whatever. But then when I look back on hockey, like, and what it gave me, I'm like, oh, like I got everything I needed from hockey, even though it plays literally zero role in my life right now. Like everything that it gave me so many amazing things that are a part of me, even though that part of my life and actively doing it is no longer a thing in my life. I squeezed all the juice out of it that was valuable. Mm-hmm. And that's something that, like, when I look at you, Jer, and what I imagine is probably true for most people with CF, like CF, and we had this conversation with John Wallenberg in Breathless, is like people with CF have this like seem to have this like disproportionate like grab life by the balls mentality and live.
He referred to it as the zest.
Yeah.
The CF zest for life.
Yeah.
Zesty cheese Doritos for
I like
life.
ball grab.
Yeah.
I like ball grab, but
Yeah, sure.
he does zest.
Donald
ball
Trump
grab.
likes
Grab some zesty balls.
Yeah.
likes pussy grab.
Yeah.
Wow.
What a
Whoa,
mix.
dude. Holy
what-
shit, dude. You took it to Trump.
I
though.
said that's what Donald Trump said. I
Right.
didn't
That's
say
right.
that.
He said,
Really
yeah, he
good
did put it
mental
something
note
like
where
that.
And John
was,
Wallenberg said something similar. To
But like,
that. We can all agree.
so in the context, in the sense of like this, you know, like I feel like you both have like you
And I think
the juice is squoze.
I
you
think,
know,
like-
and you have it.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to give that up. You don't have to give that back. Like
And
you got all that.
Personally,
Yeah.
I think like I'm in the process of like trying to accept that and like find the way to like lean into that with through therapy. But again, that's an uphill, that's a climb.
I used to, I mean, I still think it. I'm not going to say I loved being sick because I don't really know. I don't think you can love being sick. But for me, having CF was my superpower. I come from, a family where my parents waited for me. Like they wanted me, and I arrived like 5 years later. I was always made to feel very special. I was very lucky. I have a very high self-esteem of myself. I was really brought up to be like the best version of who I could be. And I felt like having CF was just like that extra little special thing. And I always thought that maybe people loved me a little bit more because I was sick. I didn't verbalize this until very recently, but because they were like, oh, wow, like she has CF, but she like goes to school, but she has like a normal person job, but she has like numerous relationships. So I was always like that girl that was like beating the odds regardless of like what the fuck was going on. And then when I started like not being as sick anymore, I was like, okay,
now I'm a muggle.
I am just like a regular, degular girl. Like what makes me special? And that was also part of the huge spiral. Is that I was like, who am I if I'm not a sick person? Who am I if I'm not a girly beating the odds all the time? Like this, and I wasn't the kind of CF person that was like live fast, die young kind of person, but I just like did things when I wanted to, which sometimes made for ethical questions, but I was like, whatever. Like, and I used to always say, it's only life. Just fine, do whatever. It's fine. So so today I'm in therapy as well, where I'm like, what makes me special? Please help me.
We're coming up to time, but before we wrap, something I wanted to just kind of like just quickly dive into is the fact that so you're no longer doing Trikafta.
Yes.
You've actually like moved on. This trial thing is just like chugging along. And you've started a new modulator. What's it called? And like, have you noticed a difference? What's going on there?
So I think it's called Vanzacaftor.
Okay.
Cool.
So another like spaceship.
Star
vibe.
spaceship. Yeah.
So it's only 2 pills. Do you take 4?
I take 3, 2 mornings and 1 night.
Okay. So I take
that's
2.
33% less.
Yeah. All right.
Math.
Just so everybody.
So I take 2 in the morning.
That's it. No nighttime. Okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
I take all my other medication as well.
Yeah.
But, and from what I've noticed, I don't see much of a difference with what Trikafta has done for me. So honestly, I can't really speak to.
Sure.
It's obviously per patient, it's different. I was talking to one of my nurses, and she's like, "Well, some people tried Trikafta and then they did Vanzacaftor, and then their results were even more intense." Like it, as you mentioned, it's like it really depends per patient.
What's your lung function now?
So it's kind of stupid because when I'm in research, they test me on one machine, and then when I go to a clinic, they test me on another one, and they're not calibrated the same.
What's the like?
So there's like a 10% difference.
Okay.
Wow.
So which is kind of annoying because I'm like, what's the
higher one?
Yeah.
So the higher one is around 80. It's like 79%.
Nice. Sick.
And
is that the clinic one or is that the trial one?
That's the clinic one.
Okay.
I think. Yeah. Because the clinic is higher. And so when I started Trikafta, I was around 50.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I went from 50 to like 85.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and it's because do you feel like you have a little bit of mucus still?
No, not really.
Okay.
If I don't do so I'm supposed to do Ventolin
Me
puffer.
too. I don't do it.
If I don't do it, which like I probably haven't touched I called an order in today because I was like, I haven't done Ventolin for like 2 weeks.
Mine's
I
I
haven't done it in like 2 years.
Yeah.
Mine's like rotting in
but
the back.
I do notice that if yeah. I do notice that if I don't do it, I do like I'll notice like a not so much like as like mucus wise, but more of like a
Wheezing?
shortness, like almost like a tightness around the lungs, like a tightness of breath.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's interesting because I wheeze a little.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons why I don't want to do any pumps is because I still want to keep a little bit of my sick me,
Okay, sure.
so I can like hear
Man,
myself.
doctors are fucking pissed when they hear that.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I know, and I'm like, honestly, I don't
Yeah,
care.
whatever. Yeah.
I could be growing a dick right now.
Yeah. Are you talking about ventilating like through a nebulizer or the
No,
puffer?
like a
Oh yeah,
puffer.
yeah, puffer. Yeah, okay, same.
Yeah.
They were like, you should probably keep doing your Ventolin
Yeah, same.
nebulizer, and I was like, can I just not and do a puffer? And they were like, sure, and that was it.
Okay.
To be fair,
did you ever trial not taking enzymes?
My
Oh my god! wouldn't
Again,
that be
another thing
dangerous?
that doctors would be like, fuck.
That
no,
sounds
because
crazy.
I would like.
I tried it the other day.
Oh god, how did that go?
And?
Not well.
Yeah, I was gonna say
I
my
had Randy's
digest-
pizza.
Oh,
and I was like,
worst
might as well,
thing.
I was like, might as well
Dude.
try it. I might as well go 0 to 100.
Dude, I need enzymes. When I
Yeah,
eat
yeah.
this pizza.
And anyway, I'm suing Randy's. Yeah.
No, my digestive like flow also changed with Trikafta.
Sure.
So kind of figuring out how many enzymes and like
Yeah.
so that was like a whole fucking thing as well. So
Okay.
I'm not even thinking about not doing enzymes
Sure,
because
sure.
it's
What about kids? The idea of kids, like, is that something?
zero
Zero
it's-
chance, like
I've
not something you're interested
never
in.
I've never wanted kids.
But but okay, so with that, you got to be a little safer, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So in clinic, some doctors are like
A lot of
they're like we have
Pregnancies.
so many crazy pregnancies
Yeah.
happening, and I'm like, okay.
happy little accidents all over the place.
Yeah, I'm like, that's not holy hell. Like if that happens to me, it's a whole other depression happening.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I don't want kids. It was kind of interesting because people were like, maybe it's because you're sick and blah blah blah. And so when I started taking Trikafta, I was like, okay, let's see if my mind changes.
Oh, you were open to it. Nice, yeah.
And it didn't.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, it's not because of the illness. It's just I feel like I don't have brothers and sisters.
Give it 2
that-
years. I'm just joking.
But I was like, I feel like I'd be like an amazing aunt. I'd be an amazing like godmother.
Yeah.
I'd be a cool friend to like take care of your kids. But the whole kid thing is just
Not for you.
no.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, Constance, this panned out exactly as I thought it would. This was fucking awesome.
Thank you for having me.
How if it, I don't know, like how can people find you if that's, or do you want to like plug, I don't know, anything?
Sure.
Just like what's your
So my Instagram, I guess, is at Connie West, but West written the French version, so OE.
US?
OUEST. It was like a play on words on Kanye West, but then Kanye did his thing, and I was like, should I change? Like, what's happening? And I also do freelance photography. I'm in Montreal, and my other name for that is at By, so BYCEFC. And I also work for a spa, and I have my own podcast.
Hey.
So the English version is Anchor Point, but in French, if there's any French listeners, it's Point d'écoute. And we talk all about wellness. I just finished my 3rd season.
Nice.
I've had so many really interesting people. So there's not that many English episodes, but there are a few. So please have a listen.
Sweet.
Well, Constance, thank you so much. This has been an absolute fucking treat.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Lovely little CF deep dive there. Connie's the shit.
She is.
And it's been a while since we had the conversation. We recorded a while ago. I don't remember if we talked about transplant at all, but
I don't think so.
transplant's a big part of CF it was for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Might not be as much of a big part of it as we go into the future.
Probably still a big part for like, I guess, like a certain age bracket of CF patients.
But the further we live into the future, the more distant past those transplants will kind of be. Now,
Wow, that's crazy to think about.
it is. But you know what? Talking about the future of transplant. Holy fuck, guys. We're living in a crazy time. So here, let me start.
Pig hearts. Are we going into pig hearts?
Let me start with this.
Head transplant.
Oh, we know where that
Check this out.
happened.
What is this?
That's a super speed train, bullet train in Japan.
Yeah, dude. It's a fucking speed train. That thing's going 600 kilometers per hour.
Have you guys ever been on a bullet train?
I have.
Are we going to be talking about nose transplants because that
Nope.
has a big nose. That
It
train
does have a big nose. Yeah. No, we're actually going to be talking about.
Link?
You know what that is?
Zelda.
Yeah. What is that sound from Zelda? What activates that sound?
Did you just get a new heart a new like health upgrade. You got the heart. You got the heart that completes the 4 hearts that you needed to increase your health power.
There you go. So we're going to be talking about heart transplants.
Wow, dude. I wasn't even thinking heart transplant. I was just like, that's the sound of the heart.
Yeah. So heart transplant. Now, why did I bring up the image or the video there of a bullet train? Well, how do those go so fucking fast?
Electricity.
Magnetism.
Electromagnetism.
Electromagnetism.
Oh, shit. Okay. Yeah. Fuck. I thought it was Crisco. I thought they just like greased
Butter
up the.
them.
Yeah. They
Like
greased that fucker up.
Like a Clark.
Well, if you do
like
that to a heart,
like a
that's not
Clark Griswold tobogganing special.
So it's actually it's maglev technology, magnetic levitation technology. It's a levitating train, and it levitates by the force of magnets. So there's no friction, which is why that thing can fucking zoom.
it's too bad we don't know how that works.
Well, you know that the tides that come, they go. We can't explain it.
Magnets are tough.
So the world's first implantation of a titanium heart harnessing maglev technology has happened.
I don't even know where
Okay.
to begin.
All
with
right,
that.
I'm already picturing
That's
this.
crazy.
Imagine, guys. Imagine it's in a chamber, and it's floating there.
I
Like
gotta-
the
I
new
gotta
heart is just
show you.
floating
I got a photo
with
for you.
magnets.
This is what it looks like. This thing is in doctor's hands.
Right? Yeah,
Okay.
that's it.
Yeah.
That's exactly
So
what I was
the
picturing.
doctor is in the Crab Nebula.
That's it. So a titanium heart sounds like something made for the Tin Woodman of the Wizard of Oz. But for the first time on July 9th, it was implanted in a patient. The implantation of what's called a total or artificial heart, a TAH,
Mm-hmm.
it is a proposed solution to help people with heart failure who need a heart transplant. So it's not right now. It's not like, okay, we're just gonna replace your heart with a fucking robot heart. It's like you need a heart transplant now. We don't have one for you, but we're gonna put this maglev speed train heart up in your shit.
So that we may save the people who are waiting, who would otherwise might die
That's right.
waiting for a heart transplant.
It's like that thing that our friend Adam had.
Kind of, but a little bit different.
yeah. What was that thing called?
It was called an LVAD.
an LVAD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So heart failure affects 6.7 million people in the U.S. alone between 2017 and 2020. But in 2021, only 3,817 heart transplants were performed.
Wow.
So again, 6.8 million people live with heart failure.
Could have used a heart.
3,817 in 2021 had a transplant.
You guys remember John Q? We've talked about John Q. Do you remember that movie? Denzel Washington?
Yeah, right. When he robs the bank.
No, his kid has a heart failure.
Oh yeah, he takes Ethan Hawke out on a training day, right?
Also, different Denzel Washington movie.
I don't know, man. Too many
yeah.
Denzels.
Takes his kid. Kid has a sudden heart failure. Goes to the hospital.
Takes the whole hospital hostage. Says, "I want money from the bank because I got to train this guy on his first day."
Those are
Get-
3 movies smashed together. He does take he takes the emergency room hostage because the insurance company says that his insurance, his insurance won't cover this heart transplant, and he's like real pissed about that.
Mm.
Sounds more like the
For
Dark
obvious
Knight.
reasons. He's got a very justified grievance,
Yeah.
and he takes the whole hospital. He takes the emergency room hostage, and the hostages are very sympathetic to his cause,
Right.
and so
Does he ever threaten to shoot?
very much so.
Similar grievances.
Yeah. Different.
Different type of shooting.
Different. Yep.
He's like,
Wow. Dude, you were so in sync with that.
I was
Or,
hoping he was going to say, "I'm going to shoot." I guess I'm going to shoot came earlier.
People who are just listening, you're gonna want to go to YouTube for that.
You're really going to want to.
Okay, so the implementation is seen as a bridge to heart transplant in severe cases of heart failure. So Bivacor's titanium heart is a new type of Australian by design.
Did you say Bivacor?
G'day. Yeah, it's
you-
called Bivacor.
You just
Doesn't-
clipped everybody's eardrums. with
Doesn't
that
every
G'day, mate.
like health tech
Bivacore.
startup
Bivacow.
sound like an evil empire?
It does, yeah.
Yes.
Bivacor. It was approved to be tested in 5 human patients in early feasibility studies in the USA. The first of those patients was implanted on July 9th and lived with the device for 8 days, and then they exploded. Then they were replaced with a regular donor heart.
Perfect.
But it was hard to catch them because they were so fast. As soon as they put this thing in them, they were like, this is an amazing advancement as the Bivacor may offer hope for countless patients who suffer from end-stage heart failure. Actually, while I read this, I'm going to show you a little video of how it works. The device may serve as a life-saving bridge to a heart transplant. Future studies may prove its potential as a long-term pump that can effectively serve as a total replacement for a patient's heart. And we're seeing video of how it works here. It looks like it's a fucking engine. I mean, they've got a 1,000 cc motorcycle engine.
It's more like a Tesla, like rear wheel drive motor.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah. And the torque on this motherfucker, let me tell you,
off the line, and it goes off the line. It's got
0 to 60.
It's got that instantaneous full throttle power.
0
I
to
think that
60
gives you like a
0.1 second.
like performance enhancement in like cardio
I do not think.
exercises.
I bet you if you healed and you could keep this fucking maglev heart in your chest without dying. Yeah,
I bet in 10 years.
maybe.
I bet in 10 years it will.
Like, I mean, honestly, this is like this could be the first step. I mean, so for folks just listening, we're looking at an animated video of how this thing works. It's fucking nuts. This thing just sits between your lungs there, and it really is robotic. Like it's a fucking
Straight up
massive metal
cyborg.
Totally off topic, but just a quick little fun anecdote that I saw on Instagram the other day. Performance, because you talked about performance increase from 1912 in the 100-meter sprint at the Olympics to 2012 when Usain Bolt set that record. So the world record in 1912 to Usain Bolt in 2012. What do you guys think the difference was in the times over 100 years of innovation and improvement in track, shoes, all that stuff?
0.013 seconds, like just a
5%.
fractions of seconds.
0.8 seconds.
Yeah. If you run any faster, I don't know if you watched the animated Matrix. They made it the Animatrix.
I'm going to say also in 1912, none of the competitors were coming from the countries that do the best at that.
Yeah. Well, in Animatrix, if you run much faster than that, you break through you break out of the Matrix.
Yeah.
Right.
That's how Buddy did it.
Yeah.
Okay. Side quest over.
That's like an 8% performance increase, right? 28 seconds, like 10 seconds.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
So this heart, this robot heart, the blood flows through the titanium heart, pushed by a rotating impeller that uses magnetic levitation. That's the same technology that made a train fly by at 603 kilometers per hour in Japan in 2015. We just saw the video there. Maglev reduces the risk of mechanical wear and minimizes blood trauma.
It allows you to charge wirelessly too, which is great.
Which is interesting. I don't know what that means. It minimizes blood trauma. Like right. I guess right. Okay. So like, can you just like, if you mix blood too hard, are you just like popping blood? I guess your blood cells would probably be like. Ugh!
It could be referencing blood pressure. High blood pressure might be blood trauma. I really don't know. But
comes with a controller and a battery, dude. Fuck yeah, dude. That the patient can just play. They can play. Bivacor says that the high score for the is being handed out to a male patient from Australia who has a high score of 10,000.
Is that like measured in days lived since installation?
I don't know. It says cha-ching, cha-ching. He's got 10,000. That continuous flow is STI.
Sorry, are you
keep up the flow from a beating heart? You know what's funny is
translating from the Gen Z translation.
I feel like this is how I imagine if this was like in music, if we could hear the musical version of a regular old ass heart transplant,
badass.
It would sound like this. This is by the way, this is you guys know this song. It's Celine Dion. Mm-hmm. My Heart Will Go On. Kind of fitting, right?
Yeah, it's loud.
That's the old heart transplant.
Yeah.
Here's the new one. I think this is the maglev heart transplant.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Have you guys ever have you guys ever been on dubstep? Have you ever been on it?
Oh, dude, yeah. Yeah, there was a while there where I was really entertained by it.
I was on it for a while.
It's a hell of a drug.
Yeah.
It is. And the novelty wore off pretty quick. You go see Skrillex once and you go, I'm done.
I don't know. Skrillex, like a handful of times, is pretty fun.
Yeah.
Jared and I saw Skrillex together. It was pretty crazy.
So, I mean, that's it. That's all I got. It's just a crazy heart. It's a crazy heart
crazy.
that's literally that's using maglev technology.
I still don't know exactly what that means in this context of this heart, but it's crazy.
I think
Just
honestly,
what it's using.
Yeah, I think it's
Oh,
yeah. It's
fuck me. Never
it's
mind.
what
You're asking so many questions.
It's what plants crave. It's just
right. It's got electrolytes.
So here I'll tell you what it is. So the titanium heart, like yours, has two ventricles. So it's the same in that way. One sends blood to the lungs, pulmonary circulation. The other sends it to the rest of your body, systemic circulation. But unlike your heart, and unlike probably other sort of versions of this, it doesn't beat, it doesn't pump, it spins.
So the
spinning.
maglev is in reference to the spinning of the motor is driven by,
and so the mechanical
magnetics.
wear isn't happening, and I guess it minimizes blood trauma, but again, I don't know what that means.
Right, because instead of going pump, pump, it's just like
it's just
yeah. Which, you know what, guys? I'm just saying, if we think of it like a lazy river,
okay.
If you're on a lazy river and your blood being pumped through a heart, that's a violent river to be in. You know, every time it's just like blasted out through your body.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have like a nice little spinny flow system that just like constantly sends it through, I mean, that sounds like a pretty nice lazy river to be on.
You know, one other interesting thing here that I see is that so it's not the first total artificial heart,
and it won't be the last.
The Syncardia was approved by the FDA in 2004. It's called the Syncardia, and the Syncardia actually was, I mean, it did its job, but it wasn't like great. There were reported to have people with the 12 patients of the Syncardia were reported to have strokes. 14% experienced thrombotic events. The maglev in Bivacor hopes to reduce these risks. Syncardia is also quite large, but the Bivacor resembles, I mean, we just saw it. It's pretty much the size of a human heart.
Yeah.
But just looks like it looks like it's for Daft Punk listeners only.
Do you guys think that because like, I mean, we've evolved so that our heart is a pump. So it, pumps and it pumps and it pumps and it pumps.
Pumps it up.
But like, I mean, I imagine that it's hard for your body, for us to evolve into a place where we have basically a motor.
Like continuous flow.
Well, this could be the first step.
And so I wonder if this is actually more efficient. We just like
evolution of
biologically, from an evolutionary perspective, like we weren't able to.
I mean, maybe like when you go out, like when you're working out, you want your heart rate to really be as high as possible because you want the most flow.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, a pumping action that stops and starts every time it pumps is not the best for that because it's not continuous. It stops and starts. So you get those gaps every time it pumps, even though they're very small.
This is the first step to being a techno-human.
Just having like a continuous high volume blood flow to all of your body. I mean, like could be, 100 years from now, could be like, oh, I can't believe we had pumps before.
And if you're a cardiologist and you're listening to this and you're like, you guys are fucking stupid.
Then you're goddamn right we are.
And you're
totally
right.
Goddamn right about that, buddy.
Yeah. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, the cardiologist probably isn't listening anymore. Like most likely. If they were listening, they're probably not listening anymore. But I mean, if you are still with us.
If you're like just a regular person with knowledge of arts and stuff, then keep that to yourself.
I should ask my sweet, sweet, lovely baby Boo, because she knows quite a bit about hearts.
Yeah. You should call her right now and ask her if a motor heart is better than a pump heart.
Don't do that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this, and we'll be back next week. In the meantime, like, review, subscribe, tell someone you love about the podcast, anything like that. It all helps. And come on over to our Discord. You can find the Discord link in all of the show notes of our episodes. And if you want to be a part of the podcast, you can.
Go to sickboypodcast.com, fill out the guest form, and tell us about your janky heart.
Yeah, do that.
Do that.
Or write us at letters@sickboypodcast.com if you are a cardiologist and you're still here.
Yeah.
So how about that? Thanks, Donovan, for helping us make this podcast possible with your amazing sound design. And thanks, Jeff Lonis, for doing manager stuff. You're great.
That's it for this week.
I'm Brian.
I'm Taylor.
And I'm Jeremy, and this is Sickboy.